This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with AutoQuote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices may vary on how you buy.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at polestar.com.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold! Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Welcome back to Mama Mystery. I am your host, Kelly, and it is time for this week's Weekly Docket. First up, we've got a stunning twist in Arkansas where a woman missing for more than a year shockingly reappears alive and walking into a gas station, leaving her family with far more questions than answers. Is it another Hana Kobayashi story? We'll talk about it. Then we're diving into a troubling story out of Iowa where authorities removed 88 kids from a church summer camp amid disturbing allegations of abuse and potential human trafficking. After that, we revisit the chilling story of Matthew Muller, the subject of Netflix's American Nightmare, who's now admitted guilt in a decades-old kidnapping case, revealing just how far back his horrifying crimes actually go. In Florida, because we always have a story out of Florida every week, we will break down the heartbreaking case of Alan Arias, convicted for the horrific neglect and death of his own elderly grandmother. And then finally, we will close out today's episode in Knoxville, Tennessee, with a bizarre and brutal attack involving a toilet plunger, bleach, and a kidnapped child, a crime that shocked even seasoned detectives. So it is a packed docket today. Let's get into it. After vanishing for more than a year, an Arkansas woman has been found alive in a twist that shocked both her family and law enforcement. Tori Ellen Millsack, who's 35 years old, was reported missing on June 6 of 2024 from Hot Springs, Arkansas. She was last seen at a residence on Edgewood Street in Hot Springs, and her sudden disappearance led to a year-long search filled with desperation and rumors. Family members feared the worst, even considering the possibility that she may have fallen victim to foul play or human trafficking. Her brother, Jason Hamill, later revealed that he was told multiple times that Tori might have been murdered, causing the family to nearly lose hope. But still, they clung to a sliver, 1% chance of hope that she was still alive, a hope that incredibly proved to be true. Tori finally resurfaced in June of 2025 under startling circumstances. According to Little Rock police, Tori Millsack walked into a gas station in Little Rock around 3 p.m. on a Thursday and told the staff her name, adding that she had been missing for over a year. Gas station employees called authorities and responding officers found Tori appearing pretty calm. Police confirmed her identity and promptly took her into custody, not because she was in trouble for disappearing, but due to an outstanding arrest warrant in her name. So Tori herself informed the officer that she had run away from home a year prior and knew that she had a warrant out for her arrest. Records later showed the warrant was for failure to appear in a prior case in Garland County, though officials have not publicly specified the original charge. She was taken to the Garland County Detention Center after her astonishing reappearance. Now, the discovery that Tori was alive brought immense relief to her family, but it was coupled with shock and a lot of questions. Jason, her brother, said that he was shocked at the news, given the grim theories that they had heard during her absence, and he admitted that for a while hope was lost, explaining that the family held on to that 1% chance that she'd be found alive, but he described how hard the past year had been. Communication with Tori had dwindled in 2023 as she struggled with PTSD after a traumatic event. In fact, she had largely cut off contact by late 2023, and then her brother filed a missing person report after not hearing from his sister for about 2 months. During the agonizing search, the family broadened publicity beyond Arkansas, worried that Tori might have been trafficked out of state. He said, quote, "If this does involve sex trafficking, she could be anywhere." That's what he said at the time. And they even considered hiring a private investigator as leads grew cold. The one haunting memory for Jason is his last conversation with Tori before she went missing. It occurred amid a family crisis in May of 2024 when another sibling was on life support. Tori called while Jason was at the hospital. Upset and needing attention, she was met with a pretty blunt response. Jason told her he did not have time to deal with her crap right then. So Tori apologized, said, "I love you, I'll call you in a week," and hung up, but that was the last he had heard from her. Jason says that exchange haunted him for the last year, thinking that maybe if he took an extra 5 minutes, things could have been different. Now with Tori found, the family is anxious to learn what really happened during the year that she was gone. Was she held against her will? Did she leave to escape personal struggles? These questions still remain unanswered. Jason said they haven't been able to speak with Tori yet while she remains in custody, but they are nervously awaiting the chance. He told reporters, quote, "I want to find out what happened. It's been a year. I want to see her, make sure she's okay," end quote. Now, as of her reappearance, Tori faces legal proceedings related to her outstanding warrant. Court records show that she had a hearing scheduled for late June of 2025, and her next court appearance in Garland County is set for July. Meanwhile, Hot Springs police have not indicated any foul play in her disappearance. It appears that she left on her own accord due to personal issues and distress. Her family is simply grateful that she is alive, saying that now it's time to start the healing process and help rebuild Tori's life. It appears that she left of her own volition to cope with personal trauma. Cases of missing persons being found safe after such a long time are very rare, but they're not unprecedented. So Tori's reappearance is a welcome relief for her family and community rather than the tragedy that they feared because of statistics, of course. But I wonder what it takes to disappear for an entire year despite authorities looking for you. It certainly begs the question that if you wanted to just stop your life where it's at and go restart somewhere else and start fresh, how possible is it? How easy is it? And what on earth was she doing for an entire year? How was she funding her life? How was she eating? I mean, I guess she could have been homeless, but when you have authorities even looking for you, these professional entities that are built to find missing people, how did she skate under the radar for so long? I don't know. Next, in a massive child welfare operation in southeastern Iowa, authorities took 88 children into protective custody from a religious camp after alarming reports of abuse and neglect. The 2-day operation unfolded on June 12th and 13th of 2025 at the Shekinah, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, Glory Camp, run by the Kingdom Ministry of Rehabilitation and Recreation in rural Louisa County. The camp was scheduled to run from June 8th through June 29th, but it was abruptly shut down when the Louisa County Sheriff's Office, along with state and local agencies, executed search warrants on the property in Columbus Junction and a related site in nearby Fredonia. The intervention was prompted by reports of child abuse and endangerment involving the children at the camp. Investigators have released few specifics about the alleged abuse, but the scale of the response was unprecedented. Nearly 100 children, ultimately confirmed as 88 minors, were removed and transported by school buses to the Wapello Methodist Church, which officials had set up as a temporary safe center. There, teams of child protection workers interviewed the kids and provided care. Many of the children were reunited with their parents or guardians that same day, while others who had no immediate local family were placed in short-term foster care to ensure their safety. The children came from families across the country, not just Iowa, which is one reason authorities took custody, to guarantee their well-being until relatives could arrive to pick them up. By June 16th, officials reported that all 88 children had been safely reunited with their families or appropriate guardians. Multiple agencies coordinated this operation. The Sheriff's Office collaborated with the Iowa Department of Health and Human Services, Child Protective Services, the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation, and the Columbus Junction Police Department to investigate and carry out the removal. So this is quite the operation. Search warrants were executed at 2 locations associated with the ministry, one on Q Avenue in Columbus Junction and another on 5th Avenue in Fredonia. County property records later showed both properties are owned by David Kung Nuam, who is listed as a minister on the Kingdom Ministries website. So Kingdom Ministry appears to be led by a Burmese American family in the area, and the camp's promotional materials were even printed in the Chin language of Myanmar. No arrests were made during the raid, but officials announced that a human trafficking investigation is now ongoing in connection with the camp. So this suggests that authorities are looking into whether the children were victims of trafficking or other exploitation beyond just the initial abuse reports. Camp organizers, however, vehemently deny any wrongdoing. Victor Bowie, the son of the lead minister who ran the camp, spoke out to dispute the allegations. He claims that the situation was triggered by a single unhappy camper, a 15-year-old boy from Texas who called the police because he just didn't want to be there. Now, according to Bowie, no children were ever in danger at the camp, and he said that they never harmed that child. They loved him. And he noted that they had bought the boy expensive shoes and clothing, like, quote, like $400 shoes, end quote, to take care of him. So Bowie expressed frustration and sadness at the raid, saying that the children in their care had been enjoying the camp and were traumatized by the sudden removal. During the law enforcement intervention, many kids were crying, and one of Bowie's own younger sisters became so distraught that she required oxygen. Bowie also pointed out that neither his father, Pastor Nwam, nor any other camp staff were arrested, which he believes indicates innocence. He said, quote, "If they want to investigate, they can investigate. We're innocent. They're not going to find anything," end quote. Now, despite those denials, authorities are treating the incident with the utmost seriousness. State Representative Taylor Collins, who represents the area, said that while the immediate priority was getting the children to safety, the investigation will continue to determine exactly what was happening at the camp. The fact that such a large number of minors, some as young as preschool age up to teens, were involved has drawn statewide attention. Investigators will likely be interviewing all the children and staff and examining evidence collected from the properties. They will be looking into any signs of physical abuse, neglect, such as unsafe living conditions or inadequate food and medical care, and any indications of broader crimes like human trafficking or sexual exploitation. So for now, officials have praised the collaborative effort that brought the children to safety. Community members in Wapello pitched in as well. The local Methodist pastor opened his church in the middle of the night as a refuge. Volunteers in a nearby pizza restaurant donated food for the kids, and the school district buses provided transportation. The Kingdom Ministry of Rehabilitation and Recreation describes its mission as, quote, assisting individuals in breaking free from addiction through God's word, offering food and shelter to those in need, and supporting individuals during fasting and prayer, end quote. So I'm confused myself. If you're confused also, you're not alone, because in their mission statement, it seems like this is a rehabilitation camp meant to kind of maybe break people of their bad habits, you know, kind of like the horrific camps that you hear about like on Dr. Phil, or those like pray away the gay camps, you know, if you kind of get what I'm trying to say. But why would there be preschoolers there if that's the case? Like, I don't know of any preschoolers that really need help breaking free from addiction or like lifestyle choices that are frowned upon in the church. So I don't know. I'm confused at what the purpose of this church really is, or this camp anyway. But camp organizers stressed that they intended to help troubled youth and believe that the raid was an overreaction to a false tip. Again, though, troubled youth, why are preschoolers there? I don't know. Something is not making sense. Regardless, this story has sparked debate in Iowa about how non-traditional religious camps are monitored and how to balance parental rights, faith-based programs, and of course, child welfare. If there are any updates on this case, and if any other revelations come to light, I'll be sure to update you here. But for now, we're going to move on to our next story, which is a notorious California sex offender who was featured in a Netflix true crime documentary who has admitted to yet another heinous crime, one that went unsolved for over 3 decades. Matthew Daniel Muller, 48 years old, pleaded guilty on June 18th of 2025 to charges stemming from a 1993 kidnapping and sexual assault that had long been a cold case. The case dates back to August of 1993 when a young couple camping near Folsom Lake in Northern California's Sierra foothills was attacked by an armed assailant. Prosecutors say Matthew, who was 16 at the time, crept up to the couple's tent at night, held them at gunpoint, and forced them out of their tent. He tied up the 20-year-old male victim and abducted the female victim, who was 19, carrying her away from the campsite. Matthew then brutally sexually assaulted the woman before ultimately fleeing. At the time, investigators collected evidence, including DNA, but were unable to identify a suspect, so the case remained unsolved for 32 years. His guilt in the Folsom Lake attack only came to light recently thanks to advances by the Sacramento County District Attorney's Cold Case Unit. Using new forensic technology, detectives were able to link his DNA or other evidence to the 1993 crime, and they reopened the case. Confronted with this evidence, Muller admitted to his involvement. In fact, authorities say that he had privately later admitted the events to law enforcement years ago, but without corroborating proof at the time, the case could not proceed. Now, with the new evidence in hand, prosecutors charged Muller earlier in 2025, and he agreed to transfer from juvenile jurisdiction, since he was a minor in 1993, to adult court to face the charges. In a Sacramento courtroom, Muller pleaded guilty to kidnapping and sexual assault charges for the Folsom case. On June 18th, a judge sentenced him to 11 years to life in state prison for these crimes. But this sentence will have little practical effect on Matthew's fate, because he is already serving extremely lengthy sentences for other crimes. Muller's 11 to life term was ordered to be served consecutively, so stacked on top of his existing sentences, and those include a 40-year federal prison sentence for a high-profile 2015 kidnapping in Vallejo, California, and a life sentence from Santa Clara County for 2 home invasion sexual assaults in 2009. Muller is infamously known as the perpetrator of the so-called Gone Girl kidnapping of 2015, a case in which he broke into the home of Denise Huskins and her boyfriend Aaron Quinn, drugged and bound them, then kidnapped Huskins and held her for a ransom. We actually talked about this case in episode 58, so it was a long time ago. I think it was back in 2021. But essentially, Vallejo police mistakenly called that abduction a hoax at first, until evidence proved that Denise was actually telling the truth and that Matthew Muller was identified as the assailant. The bizarre case and its botched initial investigation became the subject of the Netflix documentary called American Nightmare, and then there's also like Dateline and 2020 episodes on this case as well. But Matthew Muller eventually pleaded guilty in that kidnapping and sexual assault, as well as in 2 prior 2009 assaults where he broke into the homes of other women in Northern California and attempted to rape them. In those 2009 incidents, one in Mountain View and one in Palo Alto, Muller used tactics like binding and gagging the women and forcing them to drink NyQuil or other medications, but in both cases, the victims managed to dissuade him from killing or further raping them. These crimes only came to light after Muller's arrest in 2015. He has since been convicted and punished for them as well. So with Muller now formally convicted for the 1993 Folsom Lake attack, the victims in that case finally have closure after 32 years. Sacramento County District Attorney Thien Ho said in a statement that the pursuit of justice never ends, praising the cold case investigators whose work ensured that a dangerous sex offender is being held responsible for his crimes in their community. The female victim, who is now in her late 40s, has had to live with the memory of that assault her entire adult life. Muller's story is particularly startling given his background. He is a former U.S. Marine and a Harvard-educated attorney, a far cry from the typical profile of a serial kidnapper and rapist. After serving in the Marines and graduating from Harvard Law School, Muller had a short-lived career as an immigration lawyer. But around 2014, his mental health took a sharp decline. He reportedly developed severe bipolar disorder with psychotic features, including bizarre delusions, at one point believing that he was on a mission like a vigilante character. But by 2015, this once promising attorney had devolved into carrying out these violent crimes. In the Vallejo Gone Girl case, police initially doubted the victim's story because Muller's methods were so elaborate. He used drone surveillance and disguises and left a fake ransom demand, which fooled authorities early on. It was only when he attempted a similar home invasion in Dublin, California, where he accidentally dropped his cell phone at the scene, did law enforcement catch up to him. At that point, the truth of the Huskins kidnapping became undeniable, and Vallejo officials issued public apologies to the victims. Now, with Muller pleading guilty to the 1993 case, all chapters of his criminal saga appear to be closed. He has confessed to crimes spanning from his teenage years through his late 30s, and the Netflix docuseries American Nightmare has brought renewed public attention to this case, highlighting not only the trauma of his victims, but also the failures by authorities in initially handling that the 2015 incident. Huskins and her now husband, Aaron, have since written a book about their experience and received a settlement from the city of Vallejo for being falsely accused as creating this hoax. Muller's latest conviction cements his legacy as a dangerous sexual predator who operated in the shadows for years, but it also demonstrates that justice can eventually catch up, even decades later, thanks to persistent cold case work and a willingness to re-examine old evidence. Now we're going to go over to Florida, where we at least have one story a week out of Florida, it seems like. But a Florida jury has convicted a man in a horrific elder neglect case in which his 87-year-old grandmother died under gruesome conditions. Alan G. Arias, 47, of Melbourne, Florida, was found guilty of aggravated manslaughter of an elderly person on June 17th after a week-long trial. Prosecutors proved that Alan, who was his grandmother's live-in caregiver, egregiously neglected her basic needs, neglect so severe that it directly led to her death. The victim, Anita Arias, suffered an untimely and agonizing demise due to infections and complications from prolonged neglect. The case first came to light in mid-2019 when in May, Alan Arias brought his grandmother Anita to Holmes Regional Medical Center, which is a hospital in Melbourne, because her condition had deteriorated dramatically. Hospital staff were appalled at what they found. The elderly woman was covered in extensive bed sores, many of which were infested with maggots and other insects. She was also severely malnourished and dehydrated. So alarmed, medical personnel alerted authorities. Melbourne police obtained a search warrant for the home where Alan and Anita lived and discovered filthy, hazardous conditions in the woman's bedroom. Investigators found that Anita's prescribed diabetes medications had been filled but never administered to her, and the unused drugs were still in the home. Photos later presented in court showed the elderly woman's bed and surroundings were extremely unclean, and her untreated bed sores had become severely infected. Tragically, Anita Arias did not survive. She died in June of 2019, shortly after she was hospitalized. An autopsy by the medical examiner revealed the cause of death: dehydration, emaciation, sepsis, and a dangerously high blood sugar level due to unmanaged diabetes. So in simple terms, she died from prolonged neglect, lack of food and water, untreated infections from her sores, and a lack of insulin or other diabetes care. Prosecutors argued that Alan Arias, as her caregiver, had a duty to provide for her basic needs and seek medical help, but instead, he let her rot in bed for weeks, if not months. They noted that Alan lived in the home, which actually belonged to Anita, and had acknowledged being responsible for caring for her daily needs. He was well aware of her health issues, that she was diabetic and had mobility problems that left her largely bedridden. Yet he failed to do what you're supposed to do to take care of an elderly person in that state. The defense did not dispute the terrible condition that Anita was in, but they attempted to shift blame to the victim. Alan Arias and some other family members testified that Anita was a lifelong curmudgeon and hoarder who stubbornly refused food, medicine, and doctor's appointments whenever it was offered. Essentially, the defense claimed that Anita chose to live in squalor and rejected care, and that her grandson could not force her to accept help. However, the prosecution countered that argument forcefully, saying, quote, "It's unfair to say that she died the way she lived. Elderly people might be set in their ways, but you still need to do what you need to do to take care of them, or you need to ask for help," end quote. The state pointed out that Allen had other options. He could have called in-home health nurses. He could have contacted social services, or at minimum, taken Anita to a doctor much sooner. Yet he did none of those things until it was far too late. After hearing all the evidence, the Brevard County jury deliberated for 7 hours before returning the guilty verdict. They convicted Allen Arias of aggravated manslaughter of an elderly person, a first-degree felony in Florida. It carries a maximum penalty of 30 years in prison plus fines. Circuit Judge Aaron Peacock, who presided over the trial, scheduled his sentencing for August 20th, and until then, Allen was remanded to the Brevard County Jail to await his punishment. At the verdict announcement, prosecutor Tiffany Colin expressed a sense of justice served, saying, quote, "Ultimately, I'm happy the victim finally got justice, even though she wasn't here to see it," end quote. Now, indeed, Anita Arias did not live to see her abuser held accountable, but the conviction sends a message about caregiver responsibility. Local state attorney Phil Archer's office publicized the case as part of an effort to combat elder abuse, which is often underreported. It took nearly 6 years from the time of Anita's death to bring Allen Arias to trial. He was arrested in mid-2019, about a month after his grandmother died, but pretrial proceedings and delays, including backlogs from the COVID pandemic, meant that the case only reached a verdict in 2025. Elder abuse and neglect cases can be challenging because victims are often unable to speak for themselves, and defense attorneys frequently argue issues of consent or refusal of care, as was attempted here. In Florida, aggravated manslaughter of an elderly person is one of the most serious charges for caregiver neglect, reflecting the law's intent to hold negligent caregivers accountable when seniors die under their watch. State attorney officials in Brevard County noted that this conviction should serve as a warning and a lesson that if you are responsible for an elderly relative or patient, you must provide proper care or seek help before it's too late. Our next story brings us to Knoxville, Tennessee, where a bizarre and violent crime has led to the arrest of a 19-year-old Knoxville man on charges including attempted murder and kidnapping. According to police reports, Charles D. Kaufman, 19 years old, assaulted another man with a toilet plunger, doused him in bleach, and then abducted the man's 3-year-old daughter from the scene. The disturbing incident unfolded in the early hours of Sunday, June 22nd. A Knoxville Police Department detective went to a residence around 4 a.m. to conduct a welfare check. Likely prompted by a call or a concern, authorities did not specify who requested the check, but when the officer entered the home, he discovered a male victim in the bathroom, naked, bleeding from his head, and seriously injured. The man had clearly been beaten and needed urgent medical attention. Moreover, the victim's car was missing from the property, and so was his young child, a 3-year-old girl who was supposed to be in the home. An alert was issued, and a short time later, police in Sevierville, Tennessee, which is about 30 miles away from Knoxville, located the victim's vehicle. Inside the car were Charles Kaufman and the unharmed 3-year-old child. Officers took Kaufman into custody and reunited the toddler with her mother. What emerged next were harrowing details from Kaufman's own statements and the victim's condition. Kaufman allegedly told investigators that he went to the home that night because the child's mother had asked him to pick up her daughter, a claim that the mother adamantly denies. Kaufman was reportedly acquainted with the family, but the exact relationship is unclear. However, the mother later said that she's never, ever spoken to him before. Upon arriving, Kaufman got into a confrontation with the child's father, or possibly stepfather. Reports called the man the victim without clarifying his relation to the child, but the dispute turned extremely violent. According to a police report obtained by local station WVLT, Kaufman admitted that he attacked the man with his fists and a toilet plunger during the fight. He allegedly slammed the victim onto the ground and punched him multiple times in the face. He then grabbed a plunger and used it as a weapon, beating the man with the plunger and then even shoving the plunger handle into the man's mouth during the struggle. The assault did not end there. Kaufman told police that once the victim was subdued, he dragged the injured man into the bathroom, stripped off the man's clothes, and poured bleach all over his bleeding wounds. The rationale for the bleach is not entirely clear. It may have been an attempt to torture the victim even further and possibly destroy DNA evidence at the same time. Indeed, one of the charges Kaufman now faces is tampering with evidence, suggesting that the investigators believe he tried to clean up the crime scene or the victim with the bleach. After beating the man, Kaufman took the victim's car keys and kidnapped the victim's 3-year-old daughter. He left the victim for dead, so to speak. The man was seriously injured and could have easily succumbed to his head injuries if he had not gotten help. Fortunately, the detective's timely appearance meant that the victim was found and taken to the University of Tennessee Medical Center for treatment. His current medical condition has not been publicly released. Meanwhile, officers quickly tracked down Kaufman in the stolen vehicle, and the child was thankfully recovered safely, and Kaufman was arrested without incident. Prosecutors have charged Charles Kaufman with a litany of offenses for this incident. He is facing attempted second-degree murder for the attack on the male victim. He is also charged with aggravated kidnapping for abducting the child, tampering with evidence likely for the bleach and any other cleanup, and then, of course, theft for stealing the victim's vehicle. These charges could potentially result in decades of prison time if he is convicted. As of late June of 2025, Kaufman was being held in custody, and reports do not specify his bond status while he is awaiting preliminary court proceedings. Meanwhile, neighbors in the Knoxville community are stunned. Police have not released a motive beyond what Kaufman has claimed, but it appears that this may have stemmed from a domestic or interpersonal dispute. Some media reports describe the male victim as the child's stepfather, raising the possibility that Kaufman could be the child's biological father or otherwise involved with the mother in some capacity. However, the mother's statements denying contact with him really complicate that theory. It is clear, though, that this was not a random home invasion. Kaufman went to that specific home for the child, and the violence suggests that there was intense anger or instability. So there's questions that are still lingering that we are awaiting our answers to. As those details come to light, I will update you here on the Weekly Docket. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. If you ever have a case that you want to talk about on the Weekly Docket or that you would like me to perform a deep dive on, then you can go to mamamystery.com, scroll down to that white box, and you can send me a message anytime, day or night. I see all of them. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great, safe weekend. And until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious. Mama Mystery out. Bye.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law, not available in all states.